This week, a bunch of Tory Remoaners who for months have been threatening to wreck the Brexit bill by screaming that Parliament had to have a vote on the final deal finally got their wish. But, surprise, surprise, it wasn't enough. Now, as well as planning to sabotage the EU withdrawal bill, with 186 pages of amendments, they're also demanding Mrs May scrap plans to fix our leaving date in law, which they say renders their vote useless if a deal's not done until the last minute. But the biggest treachery? These Brexit mutineers say they'll vote with Labour to defeat the final bill if they're not satisfied with it, which of course they won't be. No Brexit bill will ever be good enough for one simple reason. They don't want Brexit. And to kill it, they're prepared to throw in their lot with Labour. So no more pretence from these Remoaners that they're doing what's best for the people they represent, because they clearly think they're ill-informed idiots. This act of sabotage proves it.
Carole, let me read you a quote. It says, if a democracy cannot change its mind, it ceases to be a democracy.
David Davis.
I was going to ask her if she knew who said it.
Yeah, I do, and of course.
David Davis. And it seems to me democracy is about what's going on at the moment in Parliament. It's about that debate. Surely it's not about saying because 52% voted this way, we're going to necessarily do everything that comes from the government. It says there's a proper discussion needs to go through here. And it seems to me you're being... I mean, for instance, if your constituents voted to remain, haven't you got an obligation to vote to remain?
But a lot of these...
No, but let's take the logic. The logic is, do 52% of the population who voted bind people whose constituents didn't vote that way? They voted another way. Doesn't that bind them?
My point about this, all of these Remoaner MPs, they voted for they voted to invoke Article 50. I think the vote was something like 498 to 114. They voted overwhelmingly for it, in the same way they voted overwhelmingly for a referendum. Now, they voted for a process that they knew had a 2-year timescale. They knew that. So now they want to change that. You know, you didn't...
No, please, let's get a hold on this. Following on what Greg said, 52-48 is not exact. It's a decisive decision. Well, there should have been a supermajority. For example, if you want to change the fixed Parliament, Fixed Term Act 5 years, you need a 2/3 majority in Parliament. What these people are saying is, and I think it's shocking, by the way, that they're called mutineers. It's like the Daily Mail calling judges enemies of the people. These people feel very strongly that if you have this deadline and you put it in, you cannot do that because this whole situation is evolving. By the time we get to March 2019, it's already 1.5 years. The world has changed. The Brexit situation's evolved. People at that stage, let alone Parliament, might change their minds. And if you really respect the will of the people, you have to go back to them and say, these are the terms. Are you happy to leave? Are the people going to accept that you put this deadline and Parliament doesn't accept the deal and we go crashing out with a no deal? People are not going to accept that. A lot of the people who voted to leave didn't vote with a blank cheque saying just leave on any basis. They wouldn't like to leave with no deal.
Interestingly, I came across 2 people this week who both voted for Brexit and they both changed their minds. And I said, well, why have you changed their minds? And they said 2 reasons. One, nobody told us we were going to have to pay £60 billion to leave, which we're almost certainly going to have to. And secondly, the complexities of leaving are just so great that the risk is too big.
OK. Michelle, what do you think?
Well,
let Michelle come in, Carole. She hasn't spoken yet.
Well, I'm a Brexiteer, and I share a lot of your frustrations, Carole. One of the things that I'm nervous about is I really feel like there's so much animosity at the moment and division in our country, and that makes me feel uncomfortable. So I don't like some of the headlines, to your point, I don't like some of the headlines and some of the names called. I know that at least one MP's had to call in the police because of threats, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. I want the will of the people or the majority vote to be respected. I don't see how you cannot have a date committed to legally, because if you don't commit to a date, these things will go on and on.
Carole, can I show you this headline, which has led to several threats, death threats on Twitter to Anna Soubry, who is what you would call a mutineer. And I find the language used, collaborator,
do you think
mutineer...
she hadn't had them before?
I don't know, but she received them directly after this Daily Telegraph headline. Saboteur, mutineer, enemies of the people, crush them, collaborators. Hold on, Carole, can I just finish? Thank you. It's when you run out of terms of abuse like that, obviously the leavers who are obviously finding things threatening, because I think that the mood in the country is getting a bit worried about the extent of the admin nightmare that's going to face us for the next 10 years. None of these MPs are rejecting the result of a referendum. All of them have said they respect the result of the referendum.
But they don't respect the result of the referendum.
All bar Ken, which is not the name of the chain of pubs.
Yes, he's the only one who's been...
All bar Ken actually voted to invoke Article 50. So they are actually doing what the referendum result said. And in fact, what they're doing is making sure that this enormous bill, the repeal bill that is going to cut and paste EU law, is subjected to the proper scrutiny of Parliament. You, as a leaver, said that we should take back control. Does this not apply to Parliament as well, Carole?
Yeah. I'd like to come back on what you just said about... No,
because it doesn't apply to Parliament, because all you want is for the will of the people. Whatever that means.
I've just let you talk, but can I just say, you're using words... You're saying that we shouldn't use words like mutineers and betray. They're
inflammatory.
They are betraying. They're betraying their leader. They're betraying their party. They're betraying their constituents. And actually, they're betraying the country by throwing their...
Can I finish?
You're all going at me by butting in, by throwing their lot in with Labour. That is the biggest betrayal of all.
But so can I just... Sorry, this is, as a parliamentarian, I feel that's really bad. As a parliamentarian, whether you're in the House of Commons or in the House of Lords, you're meant to be objective and independent in your views. And by the way, you showed these hundreds of pages of amendments. There are over 400 amendments in the House of Commons. Wait till it gets to the House of Lords. There will be many, many more, because the experts in almost every field, including in this field, former cabinet ministers, etc., will all...
It's admin, Karen. This is what happens when you leave a block.
This is serious. There are Henry VIII powers in there that are giving power to the government and taking it away from Parliament and the people. This is really dangerous. And also the complexity. A former head of the civil service, one of my fellow crossbench peers, he was asked, how long will it take just to implement this in the civil service, Brexit? He said, optimistically, 10 years, realistically, 15 years. The complexity of this is enormous.
Article 50 has a 2-year time frame.
Which can be extended, by the way. Which can be extended.
But do you actually not believe that these Remoaners want the time extended?
I hate this term Remoaners, by the way. This Remoaners is nonsense.
I think I said Remoaners.
No, you said Remoaners. It's not right.
I said it in there, yes.
No, you've said it.
I don't think that's right.
OK, so I will say, I stand by that.
You've also forgotten, I mean, there's two things. You've also, forgotten Farage. Farage, remember, on the night of the referendum, when he thought he was going to lose, said, this isn't the end of the battle.
We'll have another one.
So it was all right. It was all right for the Brexiteers to carry on the battle, but not for those... But second, let me ask you another question, both of you. I'll ask you. If you saw the Times yesterday and you saw the Guardian, I think it was yesterday, it might have been the day before, both suggested that there is growing evidence that the Russians interfered in the referendum. Now, if it's demonstrated that the Russians influenced the result of the referendum... Yes, but if the result...
How does that really...
No, but all I'm saying is if it's demonstrated that the Russians interfered in the democratic process in this country, but in the referendum, does that change your position? By
sending tweets, you really think that could influence the
well, it wasn't just tweets, it was more than that.
It was funding.
So far we think it's tweets.
My position was reached by doing my own research and asking myself the questions that I felt was important to me, and I stand by that decision. Sure, but the argument that is made, we've had here many times, is this is the democratic will of the people. If we can demonstrate actually it wasn't the democratic will of the people...
Greg, the point you're making is, whether it's the Russians misleading, a lot of people misled. When the time comes, people are more and more informed day by day. And as people are more informed, I'm more informed 1.5 years down the road. 1.5 years from now, it'll be nearly 3 years since the referendum took place, March 2019. Do you know at that stage, a lot of the young people who couldn't vote in last year will be eligible to vote. Sadly, a lot of the people who voted at that time may not be alive. Demographics change. So it's at that time the people who are entitled to vote must be given a chance with all the information. Are you happy to leave the European Union on the terms that are there at that time?
But they've been told they can have a vote.
And that has to be the case. That is respecting the will of the people. That is respecting democracy.